A salvo in Utah scientific terminology is when you want to perform multiple routes with just one take or one selection. We call that a salvo. That would be, for example, maybe you want to route multiple inputs to multiple outputs, or maybe you want to switch the same input up to multiple outputs. It's just literally multiple routes that happen with one salvo take, which you would perform from a control panel and switch it up at any given time, just like you would any other individual source to a destination. Now, to set this up, what you need to do is go into your Yukon application, which is go to your shortcut wherever that's at, launch the application. Mine's already running, and then navigate to your UCN file and open that. You'll probably have some control panels and other items here on the screen. And right-click on your SC4, go to Configure, and then up here in the upper right section, there's a Salvo button. Go ahead and press that, and you'll see this dialog appear, and this is where you'll set up your salvos. The first thing you need to do is decide which of the 128 salvos that you can use. If you drop down this arrow in the salvo selections window, you'll see salvo 0 to salvo 127 in here. We'll start with salvo 0. This is the first salvo, so you can call this salvo 1 if you'd like, but the way that the application looks at it is salvo 0 is the first salvo. And that's how I try to keep the number 0 in my mind here, that is the first salvo, and everything's offset by 1. So if you were switched up on salvo number 2, that's the third salvo, and just that's how I think of it, because we started counting at 0. The next thing you want to do is decide which levels you will be doing these routes to in this particular salvo. I'm going to do an HD video salvo for my salvo 0. So I'm going to uncheck or deselect each one of these boxes and leave the HD video selected. The next thing you do is you come down to your destinations and add those to the screen down here first. If you try to add a source to the screen, this is the message that you'll get. So if you left click on it, you'll notice if you left click and hold it down and then drag, you'll see the little shortcut icon drag along with you. If I drop this in here, it's going to give us this little message that says you must choose the destination device first. So it kind of prevents you from putting sources on the window first. You need to decide what destinations you want to use before you can add sources to those. So we're going to do, you can do this multiple ways. You can left click, hold it down, and drag it on the screen. So let's do monitor 1. It will say that it's in salvo 1 or salvo 0, the destination name, and it's been customized because I customized the levels. If it was not customized, it would say all, and I'll show you that on another salvo demonstration here in a moment. Okay, another way to drag these on here, or put these destinations on the screen, is by just double-clicking on the next destination that you want to add. So I'm going to double-click on monitor 3 and watch what happens. It automatically places that on the screen next. Another way you could do this is by just left-clicking on, like, monitor 4, holding your shift button down on the keyboard, and then clicking on the next one that you want to add, or multiple ones that you want to add, and it will actually highlight them all. Then you'll need to left click and hold it down and then drag it on the screen. Those are the 3 ways of actually getting these on here. Actually, there's one more way. If you do a control, hold the control button down, you could also left click as you're holding the control down, and then it will highlight other ones, so you don't have to do an entire shift and get them all. And then you could left click it, hold it down, and drag it on the screen. So that's how you get your destinations on the level window, or on the salvo window. Now, the desired sources that you're going to use, mine are HD videos. So I just wanted to use, how many do I have? 3. I have 5. So let's say that I want my first 5 monitors to have, and this works the same way. You can actually put it on there, double click on the next one, and it'll place these in the window. Okay, we're going to do it like this. I'm double clicking, and let's double click number 5 2 more times. That'll give me HD VTR 5. So if I wanted to set this up this way, this is how you would do it. If you want to remove any of these, you would right-click on it and then say delete, and it will allow you to delete that portion of the salvo. Now it comes up and actually, I'll right-click another one, delete it. It actually says, do you want to delete this salvo? It's not going to delete. This is almost a, I don't know how else to say this, but it's not really deleting the salvo. It's deleting the item that's within the salvo. So think of it that way as you go to delete these one by one. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and say yes. I want to get rid of that. Now, that's as simple as it is. You're going to drag them on here. These are the sources that will be routed to these when you perform a salvo 0. Very simple. Okay, now when you're finished with this particular salvo, you're going to press the Save Salvo Selection. Save Selection. And that now has saved salvo 0. So if I go to salvo 1, you want to, oh, I'm sorry, let's back up here. Oh well, this is a great example for showing you what happens. Actually, that save was the wrong save. I wasn't paying attention to what I was pushing here. The save button that you wanted to push was the one on the right side here. If you did not press that and you go to another salvo, it's going to prompt you and say, do you want to actually save the data from the salvo that we're changing from? Otherwise, it will be lost. Yes, I want to save that, so I'm going to say yes. So when I go back to 0 now, I will actually see that on the screen. Okay, now to go to the next salvo, let's go ahead and go to salvo 1, and let's select all of these items again in here. Or actually, because my system's set up where these are broken apart, we could do it this way. This will actually work. We'll do an all level salvo. We will then drag any destinations. My destinations are set up to function with all levels. So I can put any one of these on here. And let's say that I want to do something like this. Whoops. So I've blocked them all. If I hold the control button down and deselect one by left clicking on it, it will only add the ones or leave the ones on the screen that are highlighted in blue. So if I'm holding the control button down right now, so I want to select all of these and place these on my system, on my salvo screen. Okay, now I'm going to left click, hold it down, drag it over, and just drop it. Now we'll place them all in there. Now you'll notice the level this time says all. It's salvo number 1, and the destinations are on the screen again. Okay, let's pick some particular analog that we want to put on here. There's an analog there. If I double click number 4, the other ones, let's say that I would like to do an analog. Whoops, I'm holding down my control button, so I want to do an analog for the next one. Analog 10 for that one. Okay, let's scroll down and grab a couple of cameras, which are my SDs. Oops, I'm still holding the control down. So the camera there, camera here, and let's do an HD VTR there. So now we've got all of these selected. Okay, so I've got all 5 of these selected. I'm going to left click on any one of them, hold it down, and drag it on there. Should lay these in order to where I've selected them, just straight down the list. If you know what those are, that's handy. If you don't, it doesn't matter. You can just drag one at a time. If you want to change one that you've got on there, you'll left click, hold it down, and drag it, and just lay it on top of like camera 6, and it will replace it with the one that you want to lay on there. So you don't have to delete the line if you just need to make a change to your salvo. Okay, now let's press save on this one, and we should be able to go to salvo number 2 now, and it won't prompt us for that save action again. So if I go back and press 0, I'll have my 0. You'll see the information I put in there, and salvo 1 will be there. Now, if you want to view all salvos, you would click on the View All Salvos, and it'll show you them all in an order here. Okay, so that's a, if you don't have very many salvos or you want to scroll down through them and you don't want to click on each one of these, then that's another function that you can do there. Okay, now if you have salvo 1 selected and you wanted to make a change to a particular destination, you'll see all of the levels light up that you have selected for each one of those. If I wanted to change a portion of this salvo so that it only does, let's say, the analog, but I messed that up when I was designing the salvo to begin with, then I changed my mind. Let's call it that, because none of us mess up, right? So if you actually click on, let's say it's monitor 1 and monitor 2 that we want to make a change to here. We don't want all levels to route. We just want our 3 analogs to route. So I left click on the one, hold the shift down, and left click on the next one, and that will highlight both of them. You come back up here to this table, and you deselect it. You'll need to press it twice. First time it just highlights it. Second time it lights it up. Okay, this is still grayed out. You can barely see it, but it is grayed out. And I'm going to press Save Selection there. And do I want to save it? Yes, I do. Okay, so if I bounce back through all of these, I should now see the changes that I've made to just those 2 monitors, and the rest of them will still be showing all the levels. So the Save Selection here is actually allowing us to customize each one of these, and they actually say customized right next to it. Okay, so just for the sake of it, I'm going to press Save again. And then when we view all salvos, you're going to see that my 0 salvo was customized. The salvo 1, all of them are using all levels except for monitor 1 and 2. And that is pretty much how you select the salvos that you, or create the salvos that you want to make. Now, you notice it grays out the salvos up here, so you can't select them if you're viewing them all. So if you just want to look at one salvo, just click on this. It'll stay on the one that you wanted to be on. If you press the delete button while you're on any given salvo here, it's going to ask if you want to delete that salvo. That does the same thing as if you're right-clicking on one salvo. If you want to delete the entire salvo, just left-click on, or just portions of it, left-click, shift to the ones that you want to delete, or control to the ones you want to delete. Hit the delete button, say yes, and that'll just leave the ones in there that you don't want to make changes to. Then you'll press the save button, and again, if you view all salvos, then you'll see that it still only has the one salvo in there. Now, that's how you set up the salvos. Go ahead and click on the OK button. And there is another step to this. If you want to create a button on a control panel that can perform the salvos. If you have a control panel that has a salvo button already assigned to the panel, such as, let me go and show you. If we click OK here, I'm going to just show you a control panel really briefly here. So if we come in here and let's select the UCP XY control panel, right click on it and go to configure. This is the skin that you will see for your particular, if you had an XY panel, this is one of the models that we have. This is the skin for it. There's a salvo button already built and programmed on that panel. If you were to look at the front of your panel, there are various panels that have salvo buttons, quite a few actually. There are some that don't have salvo buttons, and therefore that salvo button would need to be added to a panel to make it work. If your panel already has a salvo button, then what you would do is simply just go to your control panel, press the salvo button. Doesn't matter what destination you're on. It could care less because the salvo is like selecting a source anyway. Press the salvo button, press the desired 0 through 127, whatever it is, because when you push salvo, it'll blink salvo and it's waiting for you to press the number. You cannot customize the name for the salvo this way. This is just a function called salvo, and that's how it works. So when you hit salvo, it'll blink salvo, pick the 0 to 127, then press the take button. It'll start blinking on the type of panel you have, and that will perform all of those routes for that salvo that you've created. Now, if your panel does not have a salvo built, the type of panel that you have does not have a salvo, and the panel allows you to put groups on here, okay, so what you would end up needing to do is go into your source table, and you can do this a couple of different ways. There are options inside of each one of these sources that when you run that source, if you wanted that source to perform the salvo at the same time that you're performing this switch. So for example, let's left click on this, go into edit device, and if you look at this, again, here's the 0, here's camera 1, this is camera 1 that we're in. 0 is the input value for the HD video level right here. And if you go to the right of this and drop this down, you'll see all of the options that you can use for this particular type of function. And let's say you wanted to press this, anytime you did camera 1, you wanted that to also route multiple other takes at the same time. So what you would do is you would press salvo, the desired salvo on here. Now, this table actually shows the salvo starting at 1. This is the quirk that I was mentioning earlier. Salvo 1 is salvo 0 from the other table. So just in your mind, you need to know that you set your table up starting at 0, and that's the first salvo. So over here, this is salvo 1. So try to keep that straight. That is a little quirkiness to it, but salvo 1 here will be the first salvo in the salvo table, which is salvo 0. If you then click on OK here, so the salvo that you select for that particular camera, salvo 1, will be salvo 0, and on down to salvo 128, and they're just offset by 1. So keep that in mind as you build these salvos. Now, that's one way to do it. I don't know how often that would be used that way, so I'm going to show you another method. If you have the ability to add another group on your control panel. Now, there are 20 available groups for sources and 20 available groups for destinations, as we've discussed in earlier training. However, if you're using all 20 of those, then you won't be able to use a salvo as a group, because the groups have to be laid on top of the group buttons, which are 0 through 9, A through F, and the 16 through 19 buttons on your control panel. But if you have the ability, or if you have an extra button available, okay, and you want to perform these salvos by selecting them from the control panel, rather than just having the direct salvo button that I was showing you, then you'll need to add a new device. Call it whatever you want to call it. I will just call it salvo, just for this demonstration, and you can call it salvo 1 if you want, or just call it salvo 0, just so that it matches the table that you've set these up in. And then down here you'll need a short version of that name, or call it anything you'd like here, and we'll call this salvo 0 also. Actually, we need to make these extension sizes at least, I would make this one 3 and this one, how would we make this one? I would make this one 3 also, and change this to an S, and make the extension 3, and so you can call this an S0 through 127. That way it won't have a problem if you want to add more salvos. Okay, and then down here, it doesn't matter which one of these you choose. You'll just literally select salvo 1 for the first salvo. So the name can be anything you want. You can call this by the name that you would have liked to call it in the salvo table when you built it. So you could call it each one of these a particular name if you'd like, and then just go. The trick is the option. So select the correct salvo there, click OK. The new salvo name appears here, so that when you now send this programming, well, actually, let me show you the rest of it. So if you click OK here, you need to right-click on your control panel, go to Configure, and then you'll see the new group name called Salvo up here in the source list. Add that to whatever button you have available that's left over. When you program this into the panel, you'll then press this button and then the 0, and that will give you that particular salvo. So you go salvo 0, perform the take, and that would perform that first salvo for you, and you could do that for every one of these. So if you went back to your source table and replicated this, let's say you had 5 salvos that you've now created. You can now come into this salvo, replicate this 4 more times. So we've pressed the 4, replicate it 4 times. I now have salvo 0 through 4. You'll need to go in and edit these, however, because these are not, you don't want to perform the same salvo every time. So you can come into these just really quickly now and just edit the salvo, because it does not increment that when you're doing a replicate. So I then just come into each one of these, change it to the salvo 1 through 5, if that's what you'd like to call them. And again, the quirkiness is just the fact that over in the creation table, it really is salvo 0. This salvo 1 over here is salvo 0. So you can correct that by just naming it the same name that's in the table, really, if you want to just call them salvo 0 to 4. Then from the control panel, you would just select salvo and then press the 0 and then the take button, and it performs the correct salvo from the table. So you'd never see this anyway. This is done one time in the programming. You'll click OK here. We've set up our button over here to say salvo, and then the way you use this after you program it is salvo 0, salvo 1, salvo 2, whichever one you select. It'll blink, it'll say salvo 0 through whatever, and hit the take button. Now that is the functionality for creating a salvo button if you don't already have a salvo button that the panel is capable of using over here. Now, when you're finished with this and you're satisfied with it, then again you'll right-click on the SC4 and program it, and then right-click on the device and program it. Then you'll go down to the program tab and make sure that it does exactly what you said. Now I'm going to do the SC4. I don't have a control panel hooked up to my system, and you couldn't see me press the buttons on my panel anyway. So I'm going to just program the SC4 again, make sure NFS server's running, make sure up here first that your setup transfer parameters point to the PC IP address. Okay, press this, and you can either press this, right-click it, press the program button. It will back it up with the new changes to your backup location. Go to program, and you'll watch that change take effect. And that's the way that the salvos are set up to be used. Now, if you want to look at those and make sure that they really made it to the SC4, go to your Start, go to your TerraTerm window, select TCP/IP, put the IP of your SC4 in there, and if you do SC4 config, and whoops, I totally messed that one up. If you turn your caps off, type in SC4 config correctly, and hit return, you'll see all the different parameters in here. What we're looking for are salvos. So right here's the salvo table. So we would be typing in SC4 config salvo. Hit return. Oh, sorry. This actually allows you to switch from here, by the way. I just needed to do a display to show these. If you typed in SC4 config salvo space and then a number, it will perform the salvo from the terminal. I didn't explain that to you. I'd forgotten that was a function that you could do, but notice how it's asking which salvo buffer. So if you did SC4 config salvo 0 from here and hit return, you would actually make that route. So you don't need the control panel to even perform this, to be programmed if you want to just use TerraTerm all the time. It's not very nice way to do it, but it does work. So if we do SC4 config and do display, that will show us the entire SC4 config file. Right down towards the bottom here, you'll see the salvos. And if you recall, we had these first 5 were salvo 0. And it's kind of cryptic, but it does show you that at least it programmed these into the SC4. The cryptic part is out here. This tells you the levels that you've got selected in a hex value. Well, it's more than a hex value. It's a value for each one of the levels for this, but we don't need to explain how that works. Just know that you can look at this and see that it did update the SC4 with the correct information. Okay, so just a quick recap. The SC4 you have to set up the salvos in the SC4 config file and save it and program the SC4. If you have a salvo button already on a panel, you can perform those takes without reprogramming the panel or putting anything into the panel. If you don't have a salvo button and you need to add one to a panel, then you can go to the particular panel that you have. First you have to create a source called salvo or whatever name you want to give it. Macro, salvo, test, anything you want to call it, and then assign the specific salvo to that. Drag the salvo onto the desired button on the panel. Program the panel with that change, and then you'll be able to make the takes from the control panel as well.